Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Bryan, and I'm the Youth Engagement Manager for CyberUp. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Anastacia Webster of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Today, she's going to be doing a second part of her digital forensics presentation. This one will focus on autopsy. We are recording this. It will be posted on our YouTube and on our website after I have it uploaded and rendered and all that good stuff. And if you think of any questions or comments or anything during the presentation, please put those in the chat and we will deal with them at the end. Now I'll turn it over to you, Anastacia.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. Real quick, I just want to apologize for not making the last meeting. I had some network issues and I couldn't make it. But I'm really glad that CyberUp was able to get me in really quickly to finish up part 2. So my plan for today is to go over autopsy, but I'm also going to show you a little bit of registry tools that you guys could start thinking about integrating into some of your courses. And I also wanted to show you registry viewer from Access Data and kind of show you that you're not really missing much in the distinction between these proprietary tools and these open source tools. So today we're going to go over Autopsy and FTK, which are both examination platforms, and then we're also going to take a look at a open source registry, a registry viewer, and Access Data's registry viewer. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I did a lot of cleanup since the last time I shared my screen here. Let's go ahead and go full screen. Okay, so this is what I intend for us to make today. Hold on. Let me figure out a way to get this panel video show out of the way. Okay, so this is what I intend to make for us to make today. A couple of disclaimers. I did go in and switch the image around a bit. It just took forever to process the other 2 images that I had from Digital Forensic Madness, or D4 Madness. So I did switch to like really old, I think this one's from like 2013 image from Access Data FTK. But this one's actually a really great resource to show you guys because it has a lot of some of the things that I want to hit on in this little presentation today. So this is already pre-made, so I'm going to close this out real quick and just completely restart it, and then we'll just go ahead and build this. But in the meantime, I did want to just bring up some of the things that I'm going to be discussing today and where you can find resources for it. So first, I'm just going to keep plugging D4 Training because they have some images that I think you guys could be using. Real quick, just some of the ones that I use in my class. I'm figuring out a way to integrate D4 Madness, the case of the stolen Szechuan sauce. I got to figure out what takes it so long to process before I can fully integrate that one. But some of the ones I've done in the past are, which one? The Lone Wolf scenario. This one has a little bit of cloud in it. The Nitroba case is pretty familiar to my students, and the same thing with the M57 patents. And these ones are cool because they're both scenario based, so you get like PowerPoint presentations and you kind of get to describe the scene, kind of like here with the case of the stolen Szechuan sauce, how it has like a scenario for the students to go through. And at the same time too, I know I showed you guys FTK Imager last time. If you guys don't see an image you like, you guys can always build your own images too, which I think is pretty cool. You guys can build your own images and then use FTK Imager to help you guys image those. For the tool that we're going to be going over today, Autopsy, one of the things I love about Autopsy is the documentation. They put it all online because they are open source. And it allows you to kind of go through and take a look at any particular topic that you guys might have questions on. So there's a lot of stuff in there for you guys to look at. Hold on, let me just make sure this is loading in the background real quick. And then the last tool I'm going to talk to you guys about today, I didn't anticipate doing a registry module with you guys, but I feel like it's so important because I feel like if you can just teach students how to assess the registry and where to, go to look for information in the registry, your students are really going to be ahead of the game, and it's really going to help with kind of everything else that follows. So Eric Zimmerman has a lot of really good digital forensic tools out there, and one of them that we're going to be kind of looking at today is, gosh, where is it? Hold on. I'm just missing it here. We're going to be looking at Registry Explorer, which is this little guy right here. And this one really simulates, like I said, the Access Data Registry Viewer. So let me see if I can kind of get these next to each other. So we're going to be looking at two similar tools and then two similar tools. I actually have the same case that we're going to be going over right now in FTK Open. So we're going to be taking a look at kind of some of the things, the differences in Autopsy and FTK. This one is proprietary, right? So you would have to pay for this specific tool. Autopsy is our good old open source tool here. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to need to do is first have our image, and then we're going to need to have it somewhere on our desktop. I literally have so many images on this particular virtual machine. So real quick, we can just go ahead and name our file. I'm going to name it, I think this is Mantooth 3 by now. This base directory looks okay. We can add a case number. I'm going to just add a case number of anything. I try and make it as realistic as I can with my students, so sometimes I'll give them like a really interesting case number, just so they kind of get the idea. We're going to go ahead and hit finish. It's going to create pretty much a shell for our case right now, and then we're going to go in and fill in the pieces of that. Okay. Okay, so this is pretty much, it should kind of be familiar in terms of what FTK Imager had us do, because remember FTK Imager had us also add a image file. So we're going to be able to do the same thing here in Autopsy. Really cool thing about Autopsy is you can take a look at pretty much any type of device, whether it's a mobile device or any other type of digital device on here. So we have a variety of different things that we can look at through Autopsy. Another cool thing just about Autopsy in general is it can either you can either run it on Windows or on Linux. It actually comes native to Kali Linux via SleuthKit. So a couple different ways that we can go about taking a look at this information, and especially if you guys have students that are just starting out using this. The command line is not always as friendly as the GUI, right? So the GUI. So this is kind of a great way to have them at least familiarized before switching to the command line. And actually, today when we talk about Registry Explorer, there's actually also a command line function to this as well. So a couple different ways we can go about using both of these. So let's go ahead and add our disk image. I actually am going to add one from a bunch of files I got here. We're just going to go ahead and add this Mantooth file. Like I said, this is such an old file from FTK Access or Access Data. I think this was there when I was a student to give you guys some kind of a time frame here. Well back in like 2011s. As far as the different types of settings that we're going to go here and select, I'm going to ignore the orphan files in the FAT file systems only because it's going to take a lot of processing time for them to go through it. And for demonstration purposes, we're not going to be taking a look at any of those. One of the reasons why I did want to bring up registry is because when you guys have students go into Autopsy, they're going to need to set a time zone for the information that they're looking at. For the Mantooth image, the particular time zone is Mountain Time with daylight savings. So we need to make sure that when we put something into Mountain Time with daylight savings, that it's reflected accurately in the time zone. So for our particular time zone, we're actually going to go to GMT 6. CST. And what's crazy is you can actually make like a whole lesson plan around just understanding how time zones function and operate in, in a computer, and then how you align and make sure that you're assessing the right time on a case. Because if you don't have the right time, pretty much all of the timestamps that you're saying that this particular incident happened or didn't happen are going to fall flat. And just to go back to kind of what I said earlier in the last lesson, everything that you do is going to go before a courtroom and be scrutinized for accuracy. So if you get a time or date wrong, it's going to have implications. One of the things that you kind of want to safeguard as a digital, as a professional in digital forensics is how good your skill set is. So if it's constantly being something that's challenged or questioned, or little mistakes here and there, it's become an issue. For sector size, we have the ability to set our sector size. I'm just going to go ahead right now and let you guys auto detect, and it'll pull up the correct sector size. For hash values, we're not even going to worry about this right now. I'm just going to go ahead and click next. Similar to FTK, Autopsy has a couple different profiles that it can use to analyze the data, and that's what these ingest models are. It's how do you want Autopsy to process these types of data. So we have a couple different ones. You can actually hover over them to see, what they are. And then if you have additional questions beyond these and you want to learn more, there's actually a whole ingest module section here that you guys can go through and pick out which ones you kind of want to teach your class, or which ones you want to focus on a little bit more. So like I said, this is such great documentation here. It really helps, especially when the students are first starting out. So real quick, I'm just going to make sure these are correct. I'm going to remove this one. And I do have to say, the more ingest modules you add, the longer it's going to take for your case to process. So if I was doing this in class or professionally, I would make sure I hit as many of these that were pertinent to the case. For today, it's not, I'm just trying to kind of get this to load as fast as I can, just so you guys can see. In this FTK module here, I pretty much put all the bells and whistles on this one, because this is kind of one that I use to teach my students. So there will be some differences when you guys see the amount of file extensions or different things that appears in FTK in this processing job versus the one we're about to do in Autopsy. So just a little disclaimer in case you guys are like, hey, what's up with the what's up with all the differences here? So this one actually runs pretty quick, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to switch to the Mantooth file. This one will actually start processing and allow us to take a look at it pretty quick here. Cool thing about Autopsy is it pretty much allows you to start kind of looking at what it develops as it's going through the processing phase. So as it continues to analyze the files down here, we can check the processing time, where it's at, and then we'll slowly start to see some options populate in our tree over here. So real quick, let's kind of just go over the basic format of Autopsy. We have our tree viewer over here, our result viewer over here, and our content viewer down here. So it's kind of similar to FTK Imager in the sense that, they have their tree over here. They have the ability to view files over here, and then content down here too. So some of this is pretty cool in the sense that it can kind of it's kind of more familiar, right, than like something like this, which is a little bit different because the tree is here, but then the kind of result viewer is down here and the content's up here. So just a little bit of differences here. We can also take a look at how the ingest modules are processing. This will let us know whether or not they've been successful, whether or not they failed, or they're taking a lot of time. And that's good information. We might actually have to go back and rerun something if there's an error message. So kind of keeping track of these is pretty good. And as soon as you take a look at it too, it's going to disappear because you already kind of took a look at it. So I think we're almost kind of here, where we can take a look at some of this stuff here. Let's just give it a little bit more time. So one of the things that I've used a bunch of different digital forensic software, and it's fascinating how each one has different aspects that I like and love, and I wish was integrated into like one like superpower software. Because one of the actual things that I love the most about Autopsy is probably going to be the communications and the timeline function. And I know that FTK actually has the same kind of functions, but I think that they actually, at least to me, connect the dots and make sense a little bit more to the students and even myself in Autopsy. So we'll take a look at these too. Sadly, the image that we're using and most images that I have don't have any types of geolocation information. I'm actually like in the process of trying to build some of my own images that might have some of this because it's kind of sad when the students don't get to get their hands on some of this stuff. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of start at least going through this. We'll wait until the final stuff finishes before we start going through some of these. So right off the top, we can see we have a nice little tree structure going here. We have data sources, which we pretty much only have one data source, which is going to be our Mantooth 32.e01 image. This should all be very familiar to you guys. I know this particular image isn't familiar, but we actually went over pretty much this whole process in the last exercise we did in FTK, right? It actually allows us to go through kind of the same files and folders here and look at the same stuff. So if you didn't have the ability to have something like FTK Imager, you can always do it here. The FTK Imager is really, it's just a good kind of tool for that initial triage of kind of what you're looking at. So we have the ability to kind of go through the same files, kind of look at some of the same things. We could check out user information through here, just a bunch of different things. So that's going to be our data source. For views, this is this is where we actually start getting into how kind of where the power of these tools are, FTK and Autopsy. And it gives you a way of looking at the data that is a lot more easier to ingest than looking at something like this, right? This is pretty much looking for a needle in a haystack. This is, going through all of these files and trying to make sense of what you're looking at. Which you can do. It's just going to take more time and resources than most have to spend on one individual case. So the very first thing that we can do is start taking a look at file types by extension and by media type, right? So we can start getting into looking at thumbnails as a category, maybe specific types of thumbnails with specific types of extensions, and we'll get to that in a second. We could take a look at videos if there is any. There's also a thumbnail option for this. And one of the cool things about Autopsy and similar with FTK is you can actually play the stuff within the environment. We have audio files, a bunch of different cool things we can look at here. You can see how it starts sorting documents for us, so we can tell the difference between HTML documents and Office documents. And like I said, this is where the power of these tools comes into play, because now I don't have to spend time going through all of these users to find all of these documents, right? They're in one central location that I can go in and start taking a look at. So a little bit of background on the Mantooth on the Mantooth case files. They really tried to throw everything in here. So there's information on how to steal credit cards. They have a meth operation going in here. They have phishing campaigns that they're trying to launch. So there's this image is kind of a good first one for the students to kind of tackle, because it kind of gives them, all of these different potential sources to look at, and they kind of have to narrow it down to, what's the real crimes that are going on here. Again, we have executables that we can take a look at. Maybe somebody was able to you know, add and execute, or maybe somebody plugged in a thumb drive that added an executable that had maybe a meta-interpreter reverse TCP session, right? Those are going to be types of things that we're going to be able to take a look at in here. We could also do it by media type too, right? So we could take a look at specific applications, bust this out. You can see there's a lot of applications we could take a look at here. We could take a look at specific registry registry information. It's kind of interesting. There's a bunch of different ways to view information in here. So some of this stuff we can actually get from just going up here to the data sources, but we can get it several other places too. So again, a bunch of different media types we could take a look at, and some of this is going to be overlapping, right? Some of this is actually going to be contained in maybe the videos listed here, and that's okay. You know, it'll appear in different places as it pertains to that specific category, and that could be good because it'll allow us to know kind of how the computer is, you know, assessing this information. We could also take a look at deleted files. There's a lot of people that think once they delete something, it's gone forever. And sometimes they do a really good job of it. Other times we still have the ability to take a look at things. So if we can, then that's great. If not, we can at least get time and date stamps of when they did specific things. So these ones are all, I think the correct time and dates down here. So for example, this is a deleted file, but we can still get the time and date, and we can even see the deleted content in this case. We could also look at files by size. This is particularly useful when you're dealing primarily with, I'm going to say images more than anything. It could be, there are things where I've seen executables that are weird, weird sizes too. But I see a lot of images in here, sometimes PDFs. So being able to look at something and distinguish it by size is a really good feature because you can sense these anomalies as to, hey, why does this particular file have this much this much within it, even though it's proclaiming to be something that it's not. And a lot of these too are kind of tied up into bad file extensions, so helps you kind of get a bird's eye view and take a look at that. So these are, you know, just some common views, and again, ways for us to process and ingest what we're taking a look at. Now, results. Couple different categories that we have to take a look at results. We have extracted content, and I love the way that Autopsy parses this information because it does it in a very nice way that I have some grievances with FTK in the sense that it kind of parses everything out, and then you have all these additional sub windows, which can be useful, but some of it's a little repetitive. So we have the ability to view XF metadata. XF data is pretty much that metadata that comes with images. Unfortunately, like I said, for all of these images, there's no real like geolocation attached to any of these because it's, you know, kind of a base image. But if this was somebody's actual computer, a lot of people are in the habit today of geotagging everything, including their images, so we could actually get some geolocation information. And this can be particularly useful in cases in which maybe somebody has taken a picture of a target or something of interest and again, geotags it. We're able to see all of this information down here in our content viewer. Let's take a look at some of the items here that I'm kind of just skimming over. But we have our source file, we can see the name, we can see the date that it's created, device model, right? What type of model that it was that took this particular image. We can see the make. We know our data source is going to be Mantooth. We can see the file sizes and then the file paths, right? Who owns these? Which users own these on the images? As far as our content viewer, we can view things in hex if we wanted to, which would help us determine maybe, you know, if something has a bad file extension or different types of properties about this particular image. We can view it in text, but you're not going to be able to see anything because it's an image. Application, this is pretty much, you know, how it looks. We can view a bunch of file metadata. You'll notice that the only item that's listed here as far as date is date created. So we're going to need to know more than that in some circumstances. So it's really good to have these this data about when it was modified and you know, last accessed. We also have context, but this isn't really going to give us anything here. Kind of the majority of what we're going to get here is going to be in this file metadata. So typically when I have students going through this, this image file every single year, because I want to make sure that the students don't look for things that previous students have looked for in the past, I'll throw out some like random curveballs of images or things that I want them to find time and dates for, because there's a lot of different things that are wrong on these images or things to get students to look at that somebody else in another following year wouldn't be able to look at. We also have results. This is just kind of going to give you this high level view that you can kind of get from here. And then annotations, you're not really going to get that much either because there's really no annotations for this. It's really going to appear in this file metadata. We also have 2 encrypted documents within this image. And if we were to, let's say, go back to something like FTK Imager and export a word list for these particular files, we could actually crack both of these passwords with either a tool like AuthCrack or a tool like a proprietary tool like PRTK, which is Access Data's proprietary tool. So we know that these 2 are encrypted. We also have the ability to tag some of these. Maybe we want to follow up, maybe we want to bookmark, maybe we want to add a different type of tag, a result tag. So there's a bunch of different ways that we can start highlighting some of this stuff and what we want to be able to do to process it later. Extension mismatch. So when we have a file that has a bad extension, that's a great way for us to say, maybe this is a suspicious file because why does it have, an extension that doesn't match what it is? So if we can kind of identify those and take a look at them, it might be something worthwhile for us to take a look at, right? Here we have something that's listed kind of as a question. It's listed as a text file, but we can see that it's actually an image. So again, there's different types of ways that suspects will try and hide information on their computers. So this easily allows us to go in and see kind of, if they try to switch an extension thinking that it would hide that information. Installed programs, we could see all types of installed programs that they had on here. Again, when they installed it, when they last created it. We could see operating system information. We can get our system and software files, which are very, very important. And we can take this kind of stuff and integrate it into something like Registry Explorer. We can see all the different operating system user accounts. And it was fascinating because earlier when I showed you guys all the users, this particular user was not listed in this data source up here. Let me go and show you guys. So it's kind of great, that we're able to kind of start seeing some, would-be inconsistencies here, right? Like, where is Laurent? So we can start trying to figure out, where these kind of missing pieces are. Recent documents, this is great. Again, we have the ability to go in and take a look at when certain things were created and maybe even some of the text of these documents. I prefer kind of doing this here in the file types. We also have recycling bin. Again, we can take a look at certain things that have been placed in the recycling bin and was not cleared out. We can see remote drives that were attached. And again, this could have implications as to the last image that we were looking at, any type of file sharing or anything like that that's going on. We can see run programs, pretty much, anything that this particular device is run. Shell bags. There's actually some good information from some shell bags sometimes that we can use to help us connect the dots. We could see USB devices that are attached. I'm sorry, I'm trying to go a little fast because all of a sudden I looked and we're like getting kind of down on time here. USB devices attached. So if there had ever been anything that was plugged into this computer, we can see what it was. Maybe it was a mouse, or maybe it was a keyboard, or maybe it was a USB. We can see all of that here. User content suspected. So this one's kind of cool because this one's actually going in and saying, hey, you know, this is a file that you might want to take a look at for whatever reason. We can take a look at the file metadata. Maybe there's something in here that's, you know, triggering it to land up here, or maybe it's something else, right? So we could take a look at that here. Web cookies. You know, what is this particular person frequent? You know, what's saved in their browsing history here. Specific web history. We could take a look at, you know, any type of thing that they've searched or clicked on. Specific web searches will be listed here, and it'll actually have the text containing, you know, what they actually typed in to get the specific search results that they're looking for. So that's just, you know, that's just within extracted content. So I hope you guys can kind of see where, you know, some of the power of this stuff comes in. As far as keyword search hits, if I had selected that particular ingest module, it would appear here. And it will allow us to look for specific keywords, but because it takes a little bit long to process, I kind of skipped this one. We also have hash set list. There's not going to be a hash hit here because there's no real hashes in this particular image, and I didn't choose that ingest module. We also have email messages. You can look at them here, but honestly, communications is somewhere we're going to take a look at these. If there's any interesting items, it'll be listed here, but there's not any accounts. This is just going to be a nice little list of email accounts. But like I said, communications is really kind of where it's at. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these. We're going to go ahead and hit yes, because we already finished processing. So again, this is just another way for us to view the data that we're looking at. And it's kind of crazy because sometimes you might see something just in this tree view here, and it doesn't really connect the dots. But when you see something in a different view, you're like, wait a minute, there's something kind of not right about this. So you can see there's a bunch of different options that we have here just for images. We can group the items by path, you know, hash set, category, different tags, maybe camera make. Maybe we've identified a suspect camera that took one image, so we want to see if it was the same type of maker model that was taking some of these other images that are on this device. We can sort by priority. I haven't assigned a priority to anything, so if we did, we could sort it by priority. We could do it by group name or group size. As far as a data source, we're pretty much just using this Mantooth 32.eo1. We do have the ability to add multiple data sources to this process. And if there had been any kind of hash hits or anything like this, it would appear over here. You know, this is kind of where a lot of our taking a look at some of these images is going to happen. And again, kind of the benefit of using this window as compared to just overall Autopsy is these videos and these images will play a little bit better here, I think, than they do in the actual environment. So I hope you guys can see there's like so many different modules you guys can integrate with your students. Like this could be a whole module, right? Communications, like I said, I love this feature in Autopsy because I think it does a really great job of analyzing and assessing these email communications and their relationships among each other. So first we get a nice little list of all of the emails that are on this particular device. We get the number of items that were sent, from these particular emails. So we can kind of see who our heavy hitters are here, right? And this is great in having us know, which suspects we should kind of be narrowing into. So if we actually click on, let's say, this first one, we can get a nice little summary kind of all the messages. We can see the total attachments that they've had, media attachments that they've had. We can actually take, and then here's like all the different file paths that those emails are on. We can actually go to messages and take a nice little look at all of the email messages that they've done and take like a nice little read through these messages. We can take a look at any headers to see if there's anything that's suspect in there. Just the text, this is just how it's going to appear in the email message. HTML, pretty much the same thing, and accounts. This is pretty powerful because it allows us to start connecting dots. So if we know that $hide, check washer, or text kid, we're all kind of a part of this email chain. It allows us to start, building out that network of what it looks like. We can go back to threads. We can also, let's say we find something that looks a little suspicious and we kind of want to figure out, where this particular letter is in anything. We can export the file, extract it. We can export it to rows and CSVs. We can view it in a timeline. We can view the file source in a directory. There's a bunch of different options to figure out, where this file is and how it's connected to everybody else. But there's not going to be any call logs or any contacts. There will be media attachments if this particular user has them, but for right now, these particular items won't be really there because they don't really have any type of calls that happen between them on this image. But my favorite tool to use is actually this visualize tool. So what we actually have to do is go back to browse and right click and it'll help us visualize. But this is a really, really powerful tool. So let's go ahead and visualize a couple of these. So what's really great about this tool is it starts building on a network of, who contacted who, how many different contacts do they have. And I love the fact that you can see the strength, right? Like how many emails were sent among this person, maybe the suspect email to maybe co-conspirators, right? Let's take a look at somebody else we might think is connected, right? We can actually go in and kind of start seeing how, maybe these, how are they connected? Are they connected between certain folks? So this is, really, really a great tool for us to kind of go and do that. Geolocation, there's not going to be any geolocation on here, but if there had been, it'll do a really good job of showing you kind of like a Google Earth, if any of you guys have done that, kind of some of that on these maps. Timeline is a really great tool. It allows you to really narrow what you're looking at on a case. When we give students these images, we're pretty much saying to them, oh, you can have the lay of the land in terms of what you're looking at. But that's not how it's going to be in actual practice. You might be only able to look at data from a certain time period. So we'll need to be able to narrow that down. You can either toggle it through this nice little toggle right here, or you can go in and assess how you want it to appear via time units or certain event types. So there's a bunch of ways that we can kind of go in here and kind of start narrowing down this time. We can apply different filters that we want to include in our searches. Maybe it must include a certain type of text. It must be tagged, has to have a hash hit. There's a bunch of different things that we can select in order to narrow down what we're taking a look at. So once we've narrowed down what we're taking a look at, I'm going to try and narrow it down as best as I can to sometime in 2017. We can actually view what those details look like, because right now we're seeing these blocks of color. And what do those blocks of color mean? Well, the blocks of color pertain to these certain events that are happening within this particular timeline. And some events might be more important than others. So if we want to, maybe something happened in March that we want to take a look at that connects to something in July, we can start going and pinning this stuff for review later and connecting the dots that way. So it's a really, really, like I said, there's so many different modules that you can use and build a course around. And there's so many underlying fundamentals that you can build your course around too. So I think I'll stop there with Autopsy. And I know I'm running out of time, but real quick, I just want to show you guys a couple other things as well. So this is the proprietary tool that I was talking about. This is FTK. It pretty much, like I said, it pretty much does the same thing as Autopsy. It just has kind of a different way of doing it. This one might be a little bit more powerful because you're able to do certain things like data cards, and it just has so many different tools that you're able to go in and actually add to the case. So a bunch of different things, a bunch of different filters we can add in here as well. But a lot of the stuff that you can do in here, you can do in Autopsy. And there's always going to be tools that you guys can open source tools that you guys can use to kind of connect some of the dots that you guys aren't getting from something like FTK, or you guys aren't getting from something like Autopsy that you would get in FTK. I know I talked a little bit about registry, and I talked a little bit about the importance of time zones. Time zone information is very important because it allows us to establish when this particular computer, or what time zone this particular computer was in, or the SID numbers of particular users to be able to connect them to certain events and documents. So we can do all of that through something like Registry Explorer. It's a free open source tool. Right now I have, I think, a system Hive in here, software Hive. Software Hive in here. But it allows us to kind of go through and really take a look at, sorry guys. Allows us to go through and take a look at that, those SIDs, or that's time zone information, or what type of software that particular computer is operating off of. So a bunch of different ways that we can do that, and using this free and open source tool. And this free and open source tool pretty much mirrors this this tool that you can do, or this tool that you can get from Access Data Registry Viewer, right? We can get the exact same type of information here. Hold on, let me kind of scroll down here to show you guys. We can get the exact same time or type of information here. So for here, we can see, which control set is being used, which lets us know which particular aspect we need to concentrate on time. We can see is control set number 1, which I already have selected. And then we can get the exact same type of information from this free tool that we would from this proprietary tool, right? Exact same type of information. So it's not, I'm a big believer, if you guys are trying to build something like this at your high school, you don't need these proprietary tools, because this tool right here is expensive. This tool right here is free. It took me like five minutes to download. So there's always kind of these nice little loopholes to get around a lot of these proprietary tools. So sorry, I know that was kind of a whirlwind. I kind of lost track of time there, but I'll stop there for any questions that you guys might have. Any questions? I know it was kind of a lot to ingest.
Does anybody have any comments or thoughts that they want to add?
No, excellent presentation. I thought that was well done and very insightful. And I thought I'm definitely going to take away with a lot of the open source tools that you shared and share with my class. So thanks for committing your time and sharing your additional information. If you wouldn't mind, I really would appreciate if you have any kind of like OneNote page with like an arsenal of open source toolkits and websites that you use that I can use for my students. That'd be great.
Yeah,
No
yeah, I can
rush in
send
getting it, but
a full
yeah,
list
but
to Amber.
yeah, but I really do appreciate your time, and the presentation was outstanding. Thanks.
No problem. Like I said, I think that this is actually one of the best ways to get students kind of interested, because it has that investigative, like, I'm going to catch the bad guy. And at the same time, they're learning a lot of like really advanced computer principles here, right? Like we talked about the master file table records and some of these other things in the last class. And there's different principles that I talked about in this class. Like I said, like time zone information, just explaining how that whole process works and how you have to do some math to figure out the time zone.
Yeah.
There's so many great things for the students to learn that'll put them on a path to understanding just computers, and then how to investigate computers.
Yeah, one of the points that I thought you made really well was connecting the dots. And so, I teach, forensics for UMUC and a couple other schools. But one of the things that I find out is like the step-by-step lab instructions, you know, the cookie cutter labs sometimes that are built into the courses often don't work, especially for a novice student that is just beginning, or even sometimes for a very advanced student that is just checking the box to get the course done. And the reason why I don't believe that they often work, because it's, you know, forensics, you know, just like cybersecurity and network security up and down the stack, it's a troubleshooting process. And so what I find is a student will like, you know, I can't figure out why this didn't work, why I'm running into a blocked wall. And maybe the process or the tool or both just is not arriving, is not getting them to the end state of the lab. The lab is expecting them to get to an end state, but the tool or the process is not working. And I really like the fact that you pointed out that between the, you know, the proprietary tool or the open source tool, doing both may help you connect the dots. And I think that that would be where we can kind of probably improve on the tools, techniques, and processes to be able to carve out data, or just kind of just, and that's kind of like what I like to teach the students. Forget about completing the lab or getting to the end state. Just learn the tool and learn the process, because it could take 4 years beyond this course to get to that part of perfection.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with your comments. I actually teach digital forensics too at a university. I teach digital forensics and pen testing. And one of the things I find fascinating just about like my pen testing students is, you know, the way that, let's say, the pen test plus book is set up. It's like, here's this command that you have to run to do this certain, you know, certain thing. And when I ask students to name me each part of the command and what it does, they can't, right? And I see the exact same thing with my digital forensics students when they go through some of these labs. It's, let me just get through this lab as fast as I can because I got a bunch of labs to go through without learning some of the underlying processes. And that's a problem, right? Because then we're putting out students that have taken these classes and say that they've done these things, but they don't connect the dots and they don't remember what they've learned. So I've had to like kind of go back to the drawing board on a lot of this stuff and just be like, if you can't explain to me what each step in this process means, like you don't, you know, you do not pass go, you do not collect $200. And it's been the exact same thing with my tests too. And my students are probably mortified for it, but I ask them to explain kind of each step in the process, or I want them to be able to tell me if there's an error, why there's an error in the process, right? And what they've done to try and troubleshoot it. Because yeah, I have the exact same thing where students will come to me and say, you know, I can't get past this. I'm, you know, I'm beating my head against a wall. And oftentimes it's kind of funny because then when I go in there to help them, it's like a simple thing that they should have understood, but for whatever reason, you know, when everywhere looks for all this information around the problem. So I completely agree with you.
Yeah, and those tools, those TTPs, and it's funny because there's definitely a crossover with the pen testing. I think is critical. So there's a lot of tools and there's techniques within pen testing, you know, that you actually can, you know, use and bake into the forensics process, especially like, you know, registry, you know, looking at files that have changed. I mean, you could be looking at malware versus, you know, something that was, you know, actually doing a forensic investigation, you know, a computer being used as a crime kind of deal. So that those registry tools are really important, just understanding what's going on. And we've become so automated where the tools do that job for us. And so the good guys actually don't know what they're doing and why they're doing it, because the tool has done it for them. You know, maybe sysinternal tools is, you know, pulled out a process and said, hey, this color pink means it's a girl processor kind of, you know, it's is like is as the joke goes, you know. So it's interesting, you know.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it is like when you talk about tools, processes, and or not tools, techniques, and procedures, it is fascinating how you talked about the overlap between like a pen test class and a 525, or well, that's what it is in my school, but a digital forensics class, because that's like kind of the exact reason I teach both of them. It's because there is so much overlap, right? You know, when I tell, like in the last image that I was talking to you guys about, there's a little bit of malware in there. There's some networking in there, so they would have had to have, you know, somebody connect the dots somewhere along their educational background, networking. So a lot of these classes, like networking, pen testing, they all kind of, you know, it's weird. They all kind of like feed into one another. And one of the things that I've been trying to do recently in most of my classes is make sure that those dots are connected in a way to where it's like almost like a scenario, right? Or it's almost like a structure as to where they can say, okay, this is what I learned in networking. This is how it applies to my pen test class, or this is how it applies to digital forensics. So in that way, it's constantly like, you know, pushing them, you know, to, reinforce kind of what they learned in previous classes, and then push them to learn something new as it applies to, you know, a topic like digital forensics.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the things that I used to do years ago in a pen test course is I used to try to apply tools up and down the OSI model. Like these are the offensive tools and these are the defensive tools that you could use in different layers of the OSI model. And with forensics, it becomes much more, you know, much more complicated on, you know, where are you going to use these tools to actually find out, you know, what's going on in the network, what's going on in the computer level, and now what's going on in the cloud level, if you can actually get that data.
Yeah, yeah, very true, very true.
No, great time. Hey, again, I appreciate your time. Well done. I wish I get 2 hours of this.
No problem.
Thank you for your comments, Dr. Hodges. It's always nice to have some back and forth. Does anyone else have any comments or questions for Anastacia before we wrap this thing up today?
Can I ask a quick question?
Go for it, yeah.
Is there like a website link or something where I could access all of the information she shared with us?
So this video is going to be posted on the CyberUp YouTube and on our website as well under our videos section. So you'll have 2 opportunities to view it online.
Awesome, thank you.
And
You're
I'll
welcome.
make sure that I send you a full list of, you know, everything that I've kind of talked about within my workshops, just so that's, you know, central, and then you can push that out.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
That will be great, yes. So what's the website name? Sorry, this is Professor Patton.
Our website is www.wecyberup.org.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming. All right, folks, if no one else has any thoughts or comments or questions, then we will go ahead and let Anastacia get back to her day and let you guys get back to your work days or whatever you have going on. I do want to plug our social media before I let you go. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn as @WeCyberUp. That is also our web address, www.wecyberup.org, even though the name of our company is just CyberUp. And then we do have a monthly youth cybersecurity competition series that is wrapping up next month, and we will be restarting the next season in the fall. And it's called the Power Up Cyber Games. It's a series of CTFs for middle school and high school students. So if you are interested in that, then you can go to our website and find information on the website, and feel free to email me or email the info to contact us. So thank you everyone for joining us today. I appreciate you being here. I hope that everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you, Anastacia, again for a great presentation. So much in-depth information. Really, really cool. So really great. Appreciate you.
Thank you all.